Good morning and welcome to today's webinar presented by Michael Dringus from Merchant Advocates. He will be discussing, I have my little script. Learn how credit card processors overcharge your business. Michael comes with 15 years experience as a sales, a developing and leading high performing sales team. And I am going to let Michael take over from here. Welcome, Michael.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for joining us today. Let me just get my screen shared here. Looks like I need to be activated for that. So if you can just approve that, and I'll be able to share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. So bear with me, technical difficulties.
Does that every time. I apologize, Michael. Also, if you have questions throughout this webinar, you may ask them immediately. Michael would like to interact with you as we proceed during live. The Q&A box should be down to your right or at the bottom of your screen.
Perfect. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you again for joining us today. And, you know, there's an ancient Chinese proverb or curse, depending on your perspective or interpretation. It says, may you live in interesting times. I think it's clear to say we live in interesting times. And for those of you in the restaurant and hospitality industry, I mean, clearly these are very, very interesting times, okay? And it's one of those situations where your top line revenue has taken a hit over the preceding months. And I know there's some changes, there's been some announcements that were made, I guess, earlier today. So the bottom line is very, very important. And today it becomes even more so important, especially when your top line growth is kind of compromised. So today we're going to discuss the silent equity partner that you never knew you had. And for those of you that have ever looked at your merchant statements, you know, whenever you think about credit card processing or you think about merchant services, there's this feeling of angst and frustration because there's no regulation in the acquiring side of credit card processing. And you literally have thousands of different companies that are out there trying to get you to switch to their providers. And maybe you make a switch, maybe you save a little bit of money on your credit card processing rates for a small period of time. But then you'll observe that your rates go up and up and up and up. They go up about 4 times per year. So we're really going to go into how that system that allows you to collect money could really be costing you more than it should. So when you look at the processing ecosystem, I mean, this is a very busy slide, right? You see all these acquirers and processors. You can see card networks, you see issuers, you see gateways, you see ISOs, MSPs. I'm going to narrow it down for you. In the United States, there's only about 5 true credit card processors. However, there's thousands, literally thousands of resellers. They're typically called ISOs, independent sales organizations. Now, why this is important to you is oftentimes you might get your credit card processing through your bank, for example. So let's say you go to TD Bank. Well, TD Bank's not actually the processor. They're actually a reseller for First Data, who's owned by Fiserv. So right there, you can have 3 different layers and everybody's taking a little piece of every single transaction. So it's important to understand that there's many different players in that payment space, and just whatever name is on that merchant statement, that's not the only entity that's siphoning off portions of your transactions. There is a flow and a life cycle to a transaction. I'm sure everybody's very familiar with it. It's quite simple. The card goes into the machine, the order goes through, and if the funds are approved, the customer is billed. Okay, now when the transaction goes through, it can go through either a terminal or a virtual terminal or a gateway. We're going to go into that a little bit further in a little further detail down the road. But here's what you have to know. There's 2 sides to merchant services. There is a regulated side. That's called interchange. Now, interchange, it's kind of where the payment starts. It's where the credit card processing starts, okay? It's a collection of about 1,000 rules and regulations set forth from Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover. Okay, that's fixed. That's the only fixed and regulated side of merchant services. It's kind of like your buy-in cost, you can consider it, right? Then you have your acquiring side, or the processor. So interchange is the issuer, if you will, and then your acquirer, your actual credit card processor or the entity that's processing the transaction, that side is entirely unregulated. And we're going to show you how much that can impact your organization and your bottom line. But it's very important to know that even though interchange, that regulated side, is fixed, there's 4 different tiers of pricing based upon coding and data flow. Now, those tiers can vary by as much as 1.5%. Why is this important? Well, if something is inappropriately misaligned on your issuing side, you could be paying way too much money before the transaction ever even hits the processor. Now, this is very important because Merchant Advocate, we've actually had clients that have perfect rates. Their processor relationship was great. They had the best possible program in place, but we still save them thousands to tens of thousands, in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars, just based upon the coding and the data flow. So it's very important when you're looking at your merchant statements to truly understand that language and to understand that there's 2 parts. You have that issuing part where it's based upon coding and data flow, and if something's misaligned, you could be paying too much. And then you have that unregulated side where we're going to discuss some of the hidden fees and hidden markups and some of the games that processors like to play. Well, why do they play these games? Well, margins have been compressed. You know, back in 2010, there was something called the Durbin Amendment that was passed really to protect business owners, to protect people accepting credit cards. Well, it was supposed to create more transparency. Didn't work. All that happened was credit card processors got more clever in terms of the way that they hide their fees and they pull them off the radar. We're going to put a little bit of illumination on that and bring them onto the radar for you. Again, it's important to note that processors raise their rates 4 times per year, okay? So even if you have good rates now, let's say you just signed up with a new provider, literally in the next couple months, you're going to see those rates go up and up and up and up. It's so very important to have somebody look at your merchant statements and inspect the details and keep an eye on it. Because if you don't watch it, you're going to have that rate, those rate increases incrementally impact your bottom line. So when we look at the complex world of credit card processing, I mean, again, there's a lot of information here, right? I mean, you have everything from rates, you've got terminal, you got pricing, you have EMV, non-EMV, coding, PCI, optimization. There's a lot of noise and information here, right? We're going to help pare it down for you. A lot of people get caught up in rate. Okay, oh, I have the best rates. Oh, my rates are perfect. What is your cost? Rate and cost are 2 totally different things, because even though there may be a very small markup for the rate, if there's something else going on behind the scenes, that could be costing you too much on your cost of accepting credit cards. Who's your sales person? What do they know? You know, a lot of times I had mentioned, you know, sometimes businesses or restaurants say, oh, well, we process with my bank. In actuality, the bank is not the processor. They're a reseller of a reseller typically. So again, there's three different entities that are siphoning off portions of every single transaction. Sometimes it's a friend. Okay, maybe your friend did give you the best possible processing rates, but again, if something's fundamentally flawed on the issuing side, you still could be paying too much. Are you with a direct relationship? Is it a direct processor or is it an ISO? Chances are it's one of those independent sales organizations that we had mentioned. And did your credit card processor come to you through your POS system? Are you using a specific equipment that requires you to use a specific provider? If that's the case, there is a cost to integration because both the POS provider and the credit card processing entity are making money off your transaction. So it's very important to understand what's truly being charged. I will share with you a lot of times with POS systems, they'll demand, the POS system will demand that you use a specific provider. And again, that's because they're sharing in revenue. It's very, very important to have somebody inspect those details to make sure that you're paying the lowest possible cost. Are you being told the truth? You know, it's interesting when Merchant Advocate's analyst team gets on the phone with a lot of these processors, sometimes the agents that our team speak with, they don't even know what the true costs are. We'll challenge an interchange cost and they'll be convinced that it's one number, but it really isn't. It should be lower. Is this due to lack of education? Is this done deliberately? There can be many different reasons, but just because your agent isn't giving you the full details might not mean that they're trying to be deceptive. Somebody above them may be managing the amount of information that trickles down to them. Processors don't want you to know everything. I'm sure you've all looked at those merchant statements, and they're very, very busy, very confusing. They literally might as well be written in a foreign language. And what's interesting is all those thousands of resellers, they all push their merchant statements out in a different format. They make it confusing and complicated. And the reason for this is if it's too confusing to understand, it just becomes the cost of doing business. Merchant Advocate is here to help, again, pull back that curtain and expose what those true costs are. Changing processors. A lot of times people say, okay, I'm going to change processors to get a better rate. Again, just because you change processors doesn't mean you're going to get the better rate. A lot of times what happens is a sales agent from a processing entity will come in and you might get a great rate up front, but again, then those rates go up and up and up and up. It's also very, very important to read the language of the agreement that you sign if you are changing processors, because oftentimes, most times, right below the signature line in that 3 to 5 page document that you sign to set up for credit card processing, there's a little tiny fine print line that says you agree to the terms and conditions set forth in something called the program guide. Now, the program guide is about 75 to 76 pages, and I've never seen one be proactively given to a business owner. Why is this important? Well, let's say a sales agent comes in and they're trying to convince you to use their credit card services, and they have a pre-populated form, and it says 50 basis points and 20 cents per transaction. And they grab their pen, the sales agent grabs their pen like Zorro, they mark off the 50 and they put 20 basis points. And mark off the 20 cents, they put 5 cents. You think you're getting a great deal. But again, that signature line right underneath it says you will agree to the terms and conditions set forth in the program guide. In most program guides, the very first paragraph, in a big bold box, there's language to the effect of, this program guide supersedes any and all other documentation. By signing the agreement, that 3 to 5 page document, you agree to the terms and conditions set forth herein in the program guide. It continues to say, no alterations, strike-throughs, cross-outs, or addendums will be honored. So just because you're signing a form that's marked up, that's, quote, guaranteeing you good rates or zero cancellation fee or no minimum term, doesn't mean that's what you're going to get. Credit card companies, again, they've gotten clever in terms of the ways that they try to charge you more money. Because face it, every time you transact, they're siphoning off a piece, and they want to take as much as they can. Merchant Advocate is here to stop that from happening for you. All merchant accounts are not equal. I had mentioned earlier that there's two sides, the interchange side, the regulated side, and the processing or acquiring side, that unregulated side. Well, every single business and entity has a specific standard industry code. And every card cost is based upon card type, transaction type, and business type. Without somebody looking at those details, you really could be paying way too much, especially if the person that entered the data when they set up the account made a mistake. We've actually had several clients that one simple coding error that we were able to correct, we had to dig very deeply to uncover it, has saved a client as much as, in some cases, we literally have a client that is saving $1 million per year on one coding error. Right here in New Jersey, there's a theater, a performing arts theater, that one coding error, we saved them $72,000 a year, just on that one coding error. We had a restaurant in Bergen County recently where we uncovered a coding error. We were able to seek a recovery for $59,000 for that particular client. It's very, very important to have somebody really thoroughly inspect the details of your merchant statements, somebody that understands it. This way you can pay at the lowest possible cost. So again, interchange is fixed, but remember there's those 4 tiers of pricing. So it is variable. It can be optimized. Now, it's very, very important that everybody be aware of this, especially since we're in an environment where a lot of times people are hand keying transactions. There's a lot of contactless currency exchanges going on. Piece of free advice: if you are hand keying a transaction into a terminal, please be sure to put the street number and the zip code there. Otherwise, you're going to be costing yourself 0.5% too much on the interchange side. And that value is increasing significantly come April, when the next increase is scheduled to hit the books. Interchange goes up typically twice a year, April and October. We just had an increase recently. Another one's coming in April. It's going to be very, very significant. It's important to know that when interchange goes up, processors tend to slip in these additional fees because it's kind of that sleight of hand. They know that interchange increases are being communicated to you. So when you see your merchant statement and you see that your cost went up, you just arbitrarily assign it to the interchange increases. But in all reality, there could be some additional fees that were stuffed in there from your processor. Different ways of processing. I mentioned earlier, you can use a gateway, which is basically a virtual terminal. For those of you that are using POS systems where you type the information right into the system, it works the same way as a regular terminal where you put the card in, you either chip read it or you swipe it. They both do the same thing. The big takeaway here, though, is whatever equipment that you have, do yourself a favor and purchase it. Don't lease it. We literally had a client I was speaking to on Friday, I guess it was, a $200 terminal. They wanted to lease this client this terminal for about $49 a month for 48 months. They would have paid thousands of dollars in equipment when literally they could have just spent $200. We did advise that client, hey, tell them no, you do not want the lease, just purchase the terminal directly, okay? Again, with those integrated situations, for those of you that are using those POS systems that are tethered to your credit card processing, it's very important to know not only what the terminal cost is, but with the gateway integration, who can you use? Are you limited to using one particular gateway? Again, that's the virtual terminal. Are you limited to using a particular processor? What are the minimum fees? And how much is the POS system making on each transaction? Are you truly getting the bottom line pricing? It's so important to have somebody look at those details for you, somebody that understands that language to make sure you're not paying too much.
Michael.
Yes, ma'am.
I have one question. The question is, how does Merchant Advocate earn their service fees? Is it a one-time fee or ongoing?
Great question. So Merchant Advocate's business model is we save you money without switching processors. Our team does all of the work for you up front. We implement our solutions. And again, your relationships stay the same. The client gets 100% of the savings up front. It's proven out via a monthly analysis, and then we simply remit back for a percentage back. So Merchant Advocate typically shares in 50% of the savings generated by our solutions, but it's all performance-based. If there's no savings, there's no fee. As a matter of fact, we won't engage formally with the client unless we can save them at least $100 per month. Now, the reason we have that threshold is because it's very labor-intensive to do the monthly analysis, because it's not just a one and done. We're bringing your costs to the bottom, but then our analyst team inspects the details of those merchant accounts every single month, and we're inspecting for what we expect. We expect those rates are going to go up. They do 3 to 4 times per year. So every single month, our team reviews the statements, and whenever we find, and I'm going to show you some examples momentarily, but whenever we find coding errors, data flow issues, price increases, hidden fees, exaggerated markups, our team goes to work to bring those costs back down and put that money right back in your bottom line. So it is an ongoing program. Our typical engagement formally is 3 years, but our average client retention is 8 years plus. The reason our clients stay on so long is because, number one, if there's no savings, there's no fee. And if you really think about it, there's no cost either, because our program is self-funded. We literally just share in a portion of the success that we create for you. And since not only do we bring your costs to the bottom, but we keep it there through our due diligence and our ongoing monthly auditing, really our clients stay on indefinitely, because why would they go anywhere else? They no longer have to play that game trying to figure out if they need to change processors, or, and if somebody is changing equipment, if they're changing to a new POS system, they don't have to do the RFP. We do that. that for them. Merchant Advocate is processor agnostic. We're not processors. We will review and inspect all the details of any particular offering and make sure that our clients get the lowest possible cost. There's no expense for that. We simply share in a portion of the savings generated by our solutions. Great question. Before I continue, any other questions?
No, there's no additional questions at this time.
Perfect. So EMV, a lot of people have been asking, is it the law? You really should have EMV terminals. If you're using a terminal, and EMV is the ones that read the chips, that's really just to protect you. It's kind of hard to contest the fact that the card was present if the chip was read, right? So it's really to protect you. That is for swipe, or really I should say chip read transactions only. So if you're using terminals, yes, make sure that they're EMV compliant. And it is recommended they go on an IP line. With a phone line, sometimes the data stacks up. It doesn't flow through appropriately. So use an internet connection whenever you can. Now, gateways, if you're using a gateway, which again is a virtual terminal, most of them at this point are EMV ready, and it's a simple matter of plugging in a little card reader into the side of your computer terminal, and then you can read the chip card that way. We hear questions about this all the time. PCI. What is PCI? I get this PCI non-compliance fee. I pay this annual PCI qualification fee. Sometimes it's a monthly fee. What is it? To simplify it, it's an industry inside of an industry designed to shift liability and to make the processors money. What do I mean by that? Well, first off, I'm going to call out the fact that over half of merchants in all business types are non-compliant. Well, what is compliance? Well, PCI compliance, basically, it's a validation of the integrity of your lines, right? So essentially, you have to take once a year this online assessment. And for those of you who've done it, I've gone through a few of them myself. Some of those questions I'm scratching my head going, how is this even relevant to what I do as a business owner, right? But you do have to take this online assessment. And then a signal is sent through your terminals, and it returns to check for any breach opportunities. So it's not very complicated in terms of the test. Literally, the PCI survey goes through, the signal gets sent through your devices, boom, you're certified. Here's why processors do not want you to become PCI certified. Well, first off, they're charging you annually or monthly for the ability to become PCI compliant. But every single month you're not compliant, they're also charging you. They're charging you this non-PCI fee. And in the past, they were as low as $20. Now the average one is around $79 per month. And in some cases, we're seeing them at several hundreds of dollars per month for non-certification. And processors love this because, number one, it's all profit to them. And if there's a security breach, guess what? You as the business owner are stuck holding the bill there. You own the accountability there if you're not PCI compliant. So again, processors don't want you to be compliant because they're making money every single month that you're not, and it shifts the liability from them to you. And this day and age, with all these data breaches, I mean, 2016 alone, there was $42 billion worth of impact from security and data issues. Fun fact, in healthcare and medical is 35.5% of the total breaches. And if you think about HIPAA compliance and the amount of protective measures in place for data in those arenas, imagine how much more volatile the potential for disruption is in the restaurant and hospitality industry. Please make sure your next step after this call, really, if you're not PCI compliant, do your PCI compliance survey, okay? It protects you and it will save you money. So we kind of went into that in detail. At the end of the presentation, if anybody has any more questions on that, please don't hesitate to jump in. But reporting and reconciliation, do you have multiple locations? Are you getting a chain statement if that's the case? Well, if you are, is the data suppressed or are they outlining your card mix? The reason I'm asking this is oftentimes if we see a chain statement and the data is suppressed, that means the processor is hiding something. So you really want to make sure that when you're getting your merchant statements, you're getting the detailed transaction counts in terms of what card types were accepted, how many transactions, what the volumes, and what the markups were. If you're just getting a few summary numbers, that's a pretty darn good indicator that you're paying way too much. Are you processing on a daily or monthly discount? What does that mean? Well, that really means when is the processor charging you for their service fees on the transaction? Are they doing it day by day, or are they doing it at the end of the month? Merchant Advocate strongly encourages you to do monthly discount, because otherwise, if you think about it, if you're on daily discount, let's say you have a return or a refund, somebody bought a gift certificate and it needs to be refunded for some reason, then you have to track down that initial transaction to balance your books. It's much easier to just have them give a summary, charge all of their merchant service fees at the end of the month. It helps with your reconciliation. Now, this is a big one. Are you checking returns with no offsetting sales? Interestingly enough, we had a client recently in the healthcare space, and we had noticed there were a lot of refunds going on. Now, hospitals aren't really known to be giving a lot of refunds, so that was a red flag to our analyst team. And there was no offsetting sale, meaning no transaction, purchase, service was provided that was paid for, but somebody was getting refunds. It turns out that an employee was literally sticking their card in the terminal and essentially refunding money, loading it up. They were pretty much loading it up like a Visa gift card, if you will. So clearly it was theft. We did take action on behalf of the client to resolve this, but it's very important, especially if you have multiple wait staff, multiple individuals using various terminals. Make sure if you do see refunds that there's an offsetting sale. Our team does this for you, but this is something you definitely want to have a little focus on. Contracts and terms. It's so interesting because a lot of times when we expose to a client that the processor's been paying them way too much, sometimes they'll go, I don't want to stay with this person. They broke my trust. And then we look and it turns out that they had an auto renewal feature on their contract. So let's say they signed up for a 3-year term. All of a sudden, if they don't cancel by a certain date, they're stuck for another 3 years. So it's very, very important to understand what the details of your contract are. And again, if you are changing providers, make sure you get a copy of that program. Little side note, in the healthcare industry, if there's anybody here involved in the healthcare industry, there are situations where insurance companies are now remitting payments using these one-time use virtual credit cards. So what that means is practices are being paid discounted insurance dollars. They go to swipe it to accept their own funds. They're losing 3.5%. The insurance company is getting a 1.5% kickback on the back end. I haven't seen it in the restaurant and hospitality sector yet, but it may be coming. I mentioned before, processors hide fees. Well, what does this look like? This is a merchant statement. This is a statement from one of our clients. Now, this line right here, you can see it's got $3,120 worth of volume. It says Visa Rewards, 1.70% and 15 cents per item for a total fee of $53.34. What does this mean? Well, this is the processor telling you that the interchange cost of this card is 1.70% and 15 cents per item. There's a big problem with this, though. That's not the cost of the card. That card actually costs 1.65 and 10 cents per item, which means right in plain sight, the processor is literally hiding 5 basis points and 5 cents worth of profit. And there's no way that anybody would ever even know that they were paying these hidden fees unless somebody went line by line on their merchant statement, saw what the true interchange cost was, understood what tier the transaction was supposed to adjudicate at, ran the math, and then compared it to what was being charged, and then reverse engineered the math to see what the hidden markup was. It's a lot of work. It's daunting. This is why processors can get away with doing this. This is also why Merchant Advocate was created, to drive that fairness and transparency in this unregulated credit card universe. This is another example of an inflated rate that's actually much lower. This one we see quite commonly. These two lines right here are situations where a transaction went through and the processor took their piece. Then the transaction was refunded. The processor took their piece again. So literally, clients getting charged twice on a transaction that in effect did not happen. We help fix that. I think one of the best, this is a perfect testament in terms of games that processors can play. You'll see right here it lists volume of $7,950. There's a fee for $92.02. What is that fee? Oh, it's a discount expense for credits. A discount expense for credits? I'm still kind of puzzled about that one. Discount sounds like it's helping you. Expense sounds like it's hurting you. Credits, which way is the money going? It's going in the processor's pocket. There's no such thing as a discount expense for credits. It's literally a made-up fee, and we see this all the time. So it's so important to have somebody really look at those details of your merchant statements. And again, not just look at the markups that are being disclosed, but finding those hidden costs, those hidden fees, and those hidden markups. Now, I mentioned a couple times, processors got clever in the way that they hide their hide their costs, right? Here's another way to do it. Now, for those of you who are baseball fans, believe it or not, this is from a professional sports team, a recent World Series winner. I'm not going to throw a name out there just because, you never want to offend, people have different passions about teams. But I can tell you, I'm not necessarily a fan of this team, but I really, really like them because they're a great client. We save them several hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. But on this one, if you look at this second line right here, it says Visa Signature Preferred Corporate Standard. And then it lists the interchange cost at 2.95%. Now that's correct. Unlike the other example where the interchange cost was inflated, that really is the interchange cost for that card. There's a 10-cent transaction fee and a total fee for $228.95. But what do you see for volume? How many transactions are there? 0. So if X times 0 equals 0 and 0 times X equals 0, how the heck can you have a $228 fee for no transactions? Quote, mathematical error in the processor's favor. By the way, this particular organization was processing through their bank relationship. So this happens everywhere. Now, for those of you that are mathematically inclined, feel free to run the math on the second line, the top line right here. Run the 5624 times 1.65%, also not inflated. Add $1.60 because there's a 10-cent transaction fee, 16 transactions. It's not $145.51. It's more like $91. So right there, just in those 2 lines of data, that's thousands of dollars per year in excess spend due to these, quote, mathematical errors. It's so important to look at the details. If you think about it, you're running a busy establishment. Who has the time to do this? We do it for you. And again, it doesn't cost you anything. We should simply share in the success that we create. Now, it's important to watch your accounts too. Now, when I say watch your accounts, what do I mean? Well, our team, our analyst team, for those of you that are familiar with that boardwalk game, whack-a-mole, where the mole pops up and you have to whack it down with a mallet, our analyst team, literally, it's like they're playing whack-a-mole with a paddle in each hand and one in their teeth, because every time we make a correction, the processors slip something else in there. And we really have to watch and make sure that what we're communicating and the solutions that have been agreed upon are implemented. Now, this is an example where we realized that there was a client that was paying too much on the interchange side. A specific card type, they're being charged 2.70%, but our team was able to identify that they really should have only been paying 1.80%, okay? So the processor said, okay, yep, we got it, we fixed it. Here, look, right here, there's a large ticket item. There it is, there's the 1.80% instead of the 2.70%. Okay, we're all good, right? Well, if you run the math, 1.80% times the volume here is $360. Why were they still paying $541.59? So again, these are some of the games that processors play. And there's no way of knowing it unless you're really challenging every line of data. Merchant Advocate will do that for you. Okay, and again, we see this all the time. Literally, let's say this gets repaired, the next month there might be a hidden markup here. That goes away, all of a sudden there's a made-up fee. So it's very important to watch the account because, again, rates go up 3 to 4 times per year. And if a processor is taking a hit, they're going to slip something else back in. And this is so important to everybody in the restaurant and hospitality industry because, again, if the top line growth has suffered, that bottom line is so much more important. It's what you get to hold on to. And instead of having these, succubus basically siphoning off these different pieces of every transaction. Again, just another example of why it's so important to monitor the account. This is a situation where in February, we noticed the client's rates were high. We were able to get them lowered. You can see these values are lower. And a couple months later, boom, rates went right back up. If you're not on top of your account, your rates will go back up, even if corrections are made. That's why somebody had a question earlier, hey, is this a one and done, or is this a continued relationship? This is really why Merchant Advocate partners with our clients and why our clients stay with us almost indefinitely, because we're doing all the blocking and tackling for our clients. They no longer have to worry about the merchant service game. We help make sure that they're paying the lowest possible cost without switching providers. And again, if they want to switch providers, they can. We can help them. We'll do the RFP for them. We'll do all the legwork. We just want to make sure our clients are paying the lowest possible cost of accepting credit cards. Kind of brings me to, okay, so how is Merchant Advocate different to a processor? How do they compare? Well, processors, they charge you more money to make money. Very simple. Whenever you're transacting, they're siphoning off a piece of every single transaction, oftentimes in multiple places, oftentimes in misleading circumstances. Okay? Customer service is often an issue. There's no clarity. There's no transparency. You get a complicated merchant statement. There's a lot of ambiguity. I'm sure you're all familiar with this, right? Merchant Advocate, we're not processors. We're processor agnostic. We don't care where you process. We just want to make sure that you are paying the lowest possible cost. We always bring your rates to the bottom line while preserving the relationships that you have intact. And again, there's no upfront cost, and the program's completely self-funded. We do all the work. If we save you money, we prove it out. We simply share in a portion of the savings. If there's no savings, we congratulate you. Hey, you're in good shape. You don't need our help. So the program is self-funded. Our revenue is derived solely from helping clients, not by burdening them with these excess fees and costs. A couple case studies. This particular slide deck is a little bit medical geared, but for those of you that are familiar with the New York metro area, there's a very large hospital over there. Has the word Mount in the beginning of it, as a mountain. We save them over $1 million per year. Another hospital over $400,000 per year. That's in the Southeast. I had mentioned earlier we had a restaurant in Bergen County recently that we secured a $59,000 recovery. That was a circumstance where there was a coding issue that was causing the client to be double charged on certain card types. We have a restaurant in Patterson that we save, $3,000 to $5,000 a month. I've got a sushi restaurant in Manhattan that saves about $7,000 per month. So no account is too large. Merchant Advocate does help clients all the way up to the Fortune 50 space, including professional sports teams, media companies, large entertainment venues. But we help the mom and pops too. We help the small brick and mortars. We help the small little pizzeria or nail salon, whatever the case may be. We're here to help you by protecting your bottom line. So the key takeaways: how do you make sure that the system's allowing you to collect money, isn't costing you more than it should? Get your account audited. I know everybody you hear the word audit and you're like, oh, I do a lot of work in the CPA realm. Literally, New Jersey CPA is one of our clients, and we're a member benefit provider for them. We've got about a dozen state and national CPA associations. There's a different perspective with the word audit there. When I'm saying audit, literally have somebody look at the details of your merchant statement. Somebody that understands the language of the complex environment of merchant services to make sure you're not paying too much. Monitor your account. If you catch something, even if you don't engage with us, again, there's no risk to engagement because if there's no savings, there's no fee. And if there is savings, the program's completely self-funded. You walk out with more money in your bottom line than you would have, right? But if it's not us, make sure you're monitoring the account. If you do find something, keep checking that account because other fees or increases will be slipped in. Again, make sure you're PCI compliant. is that's really going to protect you, and it's going to take the liability and shift it right back to the processor in the event of a breach, and it's going to save you money. Protect yourself from those breaches. Some of our partners, if you go to merchantadvocate.com, you'll see a whole slew of you'll just see partners kind of bannering right across the screen, right? There's a lot of client testimonials across all spectrums. These are just a few of our partners. And then how do you reach us? Well, you can go to merchantadvocate.com. I encourage you to really visit our website. There, like I said, there's a lot of information, a lot of valuable insight there. And there's an email address here for Mike Colonna. Mike is our key liaison for this relationship, and he'll be on hand to support your efforts, and I'll be supporting his. Okay. So what other questions do we have? I know we had some questions before.
Yes, we have a question here. What processors is the best and most transparent? Who do they find to be the worst?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Here's why there's no finite answer. I happen to like TSYS, T-S-Y-S, right? Or I used to really, really like TSYS because I felt like they were pretty transparent. But TSYS has thousands of these ISO relationships. Remember I mentioned that oftentimes you're not really processing with the processor, you're processing through this independent sales organization. So I've seen some TSYS ISOs that were great, but recently we've encountered several TSYS ISOs that were deplorable, where there were so many hidden fees and so many interchange markups. Heartland has great customer service. They're very friendly, but their rates are terrible. I mean, we see
don't say too much about our super ally partner. We enjoy Heartland here at NJRHA.
Yeah, okay.
So you may say whatever you like, Mike, but we have a lovely relationship with Heartlands.
And their customer service really is impeccable. They do have great customer service. So, but again, you have these different ISO relationships. And what I'm trying to impress upon you, like you can have an outstanding relationship. So for example, to use Heartland, I'm sure your Heartland program is fantastic, right? But there might be another Heartland relationship that's not. We've had great TSYS ones, but other ones are not. So that's what I'm trying to say is it's not so much what the processor is, it's who the reseller is, who's managing the account, how well they're trained.
Okay. Is it different tiers? Now I'm curious. Is it because there's different tiers of the level of service? The more you pay, the less. I mean, I don't know because I'm not processing.
I haven't really found a direct
I'm just saying in general.
Some organizations naturally, if the client's doing $10 million a month in credit cards, they're going to get a higher level of attentiveness. I will share with you, Heartland, it doesn't matter if the client's small or if the client's large. They treat everybody. They seem to us to treat everybody with due respect, like all due respect. But yeah, some processing entities. I mean. And for those of you on this webinar, I'm sure there's been times where you had a problem or your machine went down and you're trying to call your processor and they're ghosting you. You hear nothing. Some accounts, yes, if they're very, very large, you would think that the customer service would be a little bit enhanced in those situations, but it's not a guarantee. Okay. That's the other good thing. Merchant Advocate is here to help you when you have an issue.
We have another question here. What companies are true processors where you are not going through several third parties? I think that's an excellent question. Like, is there someone you can go directly to and have not to deal with anyone else for the most part?
There are. So Chase Payment Tech, that's a direct processor. They have kind of their own network that they've developed. TSYS is a processor, but again, they have thousands of ISO relationships too. So it's tough to know if you're getting TSYS direct or if you're going kind of, with one of their adjuncts. Global, which was now purchased by, I believe, Fiserv. See, the problem is there's so many acquisitions. So even the ones that historically were a standalone processor, there's been these purchases for like $45 billion. So they're all being absorbed. So the landscape is continually changing. The one I can say for sure, Chase Payment Tech is definitely a standalone. TSYS is definitely a standalone. There's a few others that sort of are, but they're in these merger type positions. where it's difficult to say who's kind of controlling the relationship.
Almost like your mortgage.
Yes, very
That's
much.
how I can
Very
understand
much,
it. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. All right. That's a lot to take in.
It is.
Yeah. Well, this is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. This has been very educational, and I really do appreciate you stepping in and educating our members. And this, just so you know, everyone that is on listening, this is recorded and will be available on our website within the next day or so. And again, thank you, Michael, for stepping in. Please feel free to reach out to us or email Michael Colonna. And his email is there, mcolonna@merchantadvocate.com. But what if we want to talk to you, MD? Do we get to talk to you or no?
mdringus@merchantadvocate.com. That's M is in Michael, DRINGUS @merchantadvocate.com. And thank you. I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You as well. Thanks, everybody.